Okay, we're alive. We're alive, we're live. Okay, so I will speak Spanish and I will speak English. So yeah, so I don't lose translation and anything. I will try to follow everything we speak here. Okay, hace algunos días habíamos hecho la transmisión, habíamos hecho esta conversación con Katherine Shai, que es de los Estados Unidos, la habíamos hecho, pero lastimosamente habíamos tenido problemas en la transmisión. Esta noche ella nos concedió de su tiempo y podemos hacerlo una segunda vez para hablar acerca de estos temas en los que habíamos abordado anteriormente, pero perdimos, como había mencionado, pues la transmisión. Les vuelvo a contar quién es Katherine Shai. Ella es una luchadora de los Estados Unidos, pelea en la categoría de los 53 kilogramos. Fue campeona del mundo en el 2008 de los Juegos Universitarios. Recientemente llegó a la final, en el Final X, ocupó el segundo lugar. Ha sido 6 veces miembro del equipo nacional de los Estados Unidos. También el año pasado estuvo en el Mateo Pelicone y ocupó tercer lugar. Ha hecho un gran trabajo, digamos que mejorando su condición física y pues de lucha, pues ella se detuvo durante un tiempo. Y ahora ella está trabajando durísimo para estar en los Juegos Olímpicos. Y pues yo pues personalmente espero que ella llegue a Tokio. I hope you make your spot for Tokyo 2020. Yeah, you're training every day very hard, and I follow your trainings and all your things. So yeah, I'm very excited, and yeah, I support you.
Thank you.
So welcome to Sheroes. Bienvenida, Sheroes.
Yeah, thanks.
Bienvenida.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay, we would like to know how did you get into wrestling? Nos gustaría saber cómo ella inició su carrera en la lucha. Yeah, tell us about that.
So my dad went to the 1956 and the 1960 Olympic Games, and from there, he started coaching women in the 80s. Oh, can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so my sister and I started wrestling a little bit when we were little, and got the opportunity to be around other women who wrestled, and just, for me, seeing my sister wrestle, and she's a few years older than me, that was a really big opportunity to see the path that was ahead of me. And wrestling in California, we were a big part of the big, a lot of girls starting to, learn and starting to love wrestling in California. So that was a pretty cool experience.
Bueno, ella nos cuenta que pues su padre, pues él ha estado en la lucha, incluso pues fue miembro del equipo nacional, y ella viendo a su hermana que estaba inmersa en el mundo de la lucha, pues también la motivó a ver que ella estaba siguiendo este camino. Y en California, pues este movimiento de mujeres luchando pues se veía crecer, así que eso la motivó más a meterse en el cuento de la lucha. So you were talking about that your dad was in wrestling, so he was like the person who motivated you, and your sister. Tell us a little bit about that. How is that relationship between you and your father motivating you to get into wrestling, and so you continue this journey in wrestling, in the sport?
me okay?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's lying a little bit, so I just want to make sure you guys can hear me okay.
Yeah, I hope. Yeah,
okay.
I think. Yeah, I can hear you.
So, yeah, very. Okay, good. So I'm very fortunate to have my dad coach me throughout. And, you know, he was wrestling and competing at such a high level and then coaching at a very high level. So I was very fortunate to learn, you know, his techniques. And he was very forward thinking with women in the sport and knew the importance of having of women having a space in wrestling. So I think just having that influence around me helped me see that you know, there weren't any limits on the things that I could do and could, you know, dream of in wrestling. And I think having that from a male figure is really important. And I just feel very fortunate that that's, you know, that was my father. And you know, what a special relationship to have and to bond over wrestling.
Bueno, la pregunta fue que cómo ha sido esa relación o cómo fue esa relación de inicio, pues dado que su padre estaba ya inmerso en la lucha y viendo a su hermana también hacer lucha, cómo hizo eso para que ella la motivara a empezar ese viaje en el deporte. Y nos cuenta que ver a su padre que estaba tan inmerso y pues no solamente eso, sino que estaba luchando en un nivel de alta exigencia, pues eso la motivó más, ver que él y ella tenían una relación en este deporte y que esa voz de él mostrándole las técnicas y esa relación que podían establecer la motivó a que a continuar con la lucha. Y también pues menciona que pues esa voz masculina también le ayudó a tener un poco más de, digamos que de confianza en cuanto a algunos aspectos del deporte. Vamos a hablarle acerca de cómo es entonces esa relación de la familia, dado que nos está contando acerca de esa relación que su padre pues a través de su voz le comparte y le da apoyo. So we would like to know, yeah, you're talking about that your father is that voice that he coaches you or coaches you. And how is that family support once you start wrestling?
Yeah, you know, family support, I think it looks between, depending on, you know, family, you know, what your situation looks like. And, you know, having my family be supportive of my career while I was young, and then even now that I'm older and now I have, you know, a husband, that's the family, that's the support. It is really important, especially if you want to take sport to a very high level. And, you know, I think, you know, family doesn't always mean that they have to be 100% involved every day in what you're doing. But I think understanding when you have to make hard choices about, you know, living situations or, you know, school, you know, certain schools or where you have to live, that's when family becomes very important to, you know, help support those decisions that you have to make, because they're hard and they're emotional to begin with. And you need someone who's saying like, hey, I'm with you no matter what you do, no matter what, you know, you choose. Like, I'm going to help you through the hard decisions. And I think that's where my family has been really helpful and given me that space to change locations and to make hard decisions so that I can keep getting closer and closer to my goals.
Bueno, nos comenta que pues, su esposo ha sido de gran ayuda porque han venido muchas situaciones difíciles en las que la han apoyado porque pues, cambiar de ubicaciones, digamos de ciudades, son decisiones que se toman y que tienen que ser bien pensadas. Lo siento. Y ese apoyo familiar ha sido muy importante para poder continuar con su carrera deportiva. And Yeah, you're talking about like the support from your husband, and how how do you connect that? Because, uh, for example, well, women in wrestling, it's very tough. It's considered to be tough, but how that do you connect that your husband wants to support you and still give your best on wrestling, and yeah, like make this, because you have two roles, uh, husband and then wrestling. So how do you connect that and keep that working on, I mean, I'm doing this complicated, sorry. How do you connect that? Because uh, how's that support from your husband in wrestling?
So, in some ways, I feel like we're talking about two different things. Like, one part of this is like the cultural differences, right? That we're talking about. That sometimes in different cultures, it's like not as accepted for, wrestling is still perceived as like very tough, very masculine, maybe, right? And so I feel like part of my journey is showing that like wrestling can be very tough, but it's also like a really beautiful technical dance. And you find your toughness through the perfection of technique. So in those ways, I don't feel like my ability to be mom and wife are compromised, or to take on some of that role that's like the more traditional role. Because one part is like, because of a schedule as an athlete, even though it's difficult, I have a lot of flexibility, so I can and I enjoy doing things like cooking and handling some of the house stuff. But I think the biggest thing has been that we've both had to like make, I always say that I'm not the one making the sacrifices, that my family, my husband, and luckily my child is really little, so he's gonna remember a lot. Um, but they're the one making the sacrifices, so he's had to buy in, and in that way, like, I've also had to buy in and say like, hey, here's the roles that I'm, that are important to me. So it's a continual trade-off of support. And right now, I'm very fortunate. The focus is on helping and support me for my goals. And after this, that will probably shift and be more focused on my husband's career goals. So I think just both people recognizing that this is temporary, but we're both, upholding roles and balance as best as we can. But we know that right now, like, life is a little crazy.
Yeah. Ella nos menciona que estamos hablando acerca de este rol. Pues ella tiene dos roles, el ser una atleta y pues también el ser una esposa, y cómo maneja estos dos roles. Ella dice que es muy afortunada porque pues su esposo la apoya, y ella pues de todas maneras se encuentra que no hay unas grandes diferencias, porque el hecho de ser afectiva no interfiere con el hecho de que pueda ser un atleta. Y aunque la lucha pueda ser considerada un deporte, digamos que masculino, por así decirlo, eh, ella encuentra que es más bien como un baile flexible, un baile dinámico. Entonces siente que esto no hay una brecha grande. Y en cuanto al apoyo que menciona, lo que dice es que esto es temporal, que cada quien tiene un rol, pero igual los dos se apoyan. And from that, you mentioned before that you have roles. Okay, we have mentioned you have different roles at home. And how is that socially perceived, that a woman has, and you have your role as a mom, you have your role as a wife, athlete, but you're also a businesswoman, sorry. And how is that perceived, that you have these roles, and how do you cope with that?
Yeah, I think, back to some of that cultural parts, right? I think in the US, it's also very like accepted to take on a lot of different things. Um, I think there was a time where I had to kind of battle with like, well, who am I? And like, what does that mean? Am I A, B, or C? And then I realized like the definition has to come from me because uh, I don't have to put myself in one category. It's for lack of a better explanation, it is a balancing act, but I don't have to at any point like turn one off and be like, I'm only this, I'm only mom, because I kind of have to, you know, kind of dance between each thing, like I'm heading to a practice, but then if something happens with my husband or my son, like, okay, you got to turn on the other part and, that caregiver side. And um, I think that once I stopped leaning towards like defining myself as one thing or another, it really helped. Like even with athlete, I think the hardest thing that athletes have is saying like, well, I'm an athlete, and once I'm not an athlete, I don't feel like I'm anything. So I think that has to be the same with any role, because we don't know what could happen, and things are ever changing, right? So if you're holding yourself as one definition, then it's going to be very hard for you to like take on something else. Maybe my roles and my titles could shift and change. So it's more about defining myself and just what do I actually want to do? What makes me happy and what gets me excited.
Yeah, this is very cool. This is a very nice perspective, I find. Yeah, lo que estamos hablando ahora es que ella tiene diferentes roles, así que pues es madre, es esposa, es también eh, tiene negocios y es atleta y pues entonces nos interesa saber cómo hace ella para poder manejar estos. Ella dice que esto es visto pues desde la perspectiva social, pues en Estados Unidos es muy común tener diferentes roles, pero más allá de ello, ella hace mucho tiempo se hizo la pregunta de quién ella deseaba definir quién es ella. Así que ella decidió que ella es ella misma cumpliendo todos los roles porque nunca va a apagar un rol para encender otro. Dicho de otra manera, no va a dejar de ser madre para después cambiar a ser atleta. Todo el tiempo es ella misma y lo que hace es mantener ese siendo ella misma porque pues al fin y al cabo pues es ella misma la que está actuando. Um, this is very attractive as a definition you gave us because well, it is socially perceived, as you mentioned, that yeah, you have, or well, a person should have one role for a thing, and you you develop these roles. How the role, or well, how does wrestling can helps you for your everyday life? How do you extract the best things from that in order to improve your life?
Yeah,
Or
I
well,
mean,
yeah,
yeah. So, I think that actually goes right back to how athletes define themselves, right? Like once athletics is gone, which it will be gone, um, are you still stuck in the athlete mode, or like the need for competition to define yourself? So a lot of us have been trapped in that. And for me, wrestling continues to like give me an opportunity to redefine myself and to accept challenges in a way that I actually need it personally, and versus just like just the wins and the losses, even though that's obviously like the stepping stones and the goals, and it's still very difficult to sometimes handle the very hard losses. But it's helped me define like where I want to go after my career, and it helped me form my business. It helps me understand relationships like with other people. I mean, you know, wrestling just keeps presenting me with ways to like uncover my own layers, and that's the biggest work that I'm having to do right now to prep for Tokyo, is really diving into those layers. And I just am finding new ways over and over to define myself and to relate to the whole world through wrestling.
Ahora lo que hablamos es de cómo la lucha influye sobre el resto de su vida cotidiana, y lo que nos menciona es que la lucha pues le contribuye, y son digamos que capas que hay para definir de quién es ella, y pues lo que ayuda a que ella tenga determinación para poder ir a objetivos tales como ir a Juegos de Tokio. Y eso, en eso consiste, en que le ayuda, en que le proporciona fuerza para poder tomar decisiones. So we talk about decisions, and how is that socially perceived, that a woman can be tough, can be determined to achieve goals, and how is it perceived in your environment?
Yeah, I think that there's still pieces, especially when it comes to wrestling, that are we're having to change people's perspective about, you know, and I think that this goes with boys and men in wrestling too. We're having to change the perspective of how tough, you know, do you need to be perceived in order to be a part of wrestling. And in the US, we've had some issues with pushing out young kids, boys or girls, away from the sport just because they weren't seen as tough enough. So I think that there's a lot, you know, a lot of redefining to do in society in general. And part of that's going to be the perception of, you know, can women be just as tough as men, right? And I think that's actually, instead of just redefining it for women, I think we actually need to redefine it for wrestling, because we don't, you know, no longer does it serve us to exclude people from our sport. Like we need to pull everybody into the sport, and create more fans and not make it so exclusive, right? So so I do think that it's important to continue to show, you know, however they want to be seen or perceived. You know, social media is such a big tool in that. But we need to continue to like show the public what it looks like to be a female wrestler, so that it doesn't have to look like one thing. Because there's a lot of women who fit that really well, you know, and like, hey, that looks like what I would imagine a female wrestler. And then there's other people, you know, myself included, that you're like, you might not really look like a wrestler like how I thought. So I think there's a constant evolution with redefining what it looks like from the outside, especially for women.
En este momento hablamos de cómo es socialmente, es percibida socialmente, cómo, o sea, el hecho de que una mujer sea, digamos, dura, que sea determinada, y ella nos menciona que eso tiene que ver con esas percepciones sociales que deben ser puestas siempre en constante transformación, porque hay estos matices en los que buscan decir o definir que una mujer, por el hecho de estar en la lucha, con un deporte de combate, debe lucir de esta o esta característica. Pues en su caso le ha sucedido que dicen, bueno, tú no luces mucho como para ser una luchadora, pues, y entonces, ¿cómo debe ser para lucir como una luchadora? Entonces hay que poner siempre, hay que evitar, hay que transformar estos juicios y definirlos. Yeah, I think women are working very hard to redefine what things should be called, like, because it's people believe that it should be just one way. It's true what you say, And yeah, there are different layers, there are different characteristics. And yeah, this, and regarding this, you're a member for a society that is Wrestle Like a Girl, and you also have your own company that is Lucha Fit. Estamos hablando de que pues, la sociedad siempre está viendo cómo definir en un esquema que debe ser o pertenecer a esta forma u otra. Y en este aspecto queremos hablar acerca de ella ella es miembro de un movimiento que se llama Wrestle Like a Girl, lucha como una chica, y también ella posee su propia compañía que se llama Lucha Fit. So you have Wrestle Like a Girl that promotes women in wrestling, and you want to spread a word that is women work and raise awareness para visibilizar las chicas. Tell us about this.
So I was a part of their very beginning of Wrestling. So basically, I was a founding board member, and really helped the first 2 to 3 years on, figuring out what Wrestle Like a Girl could do in the U.S. and even throughout the world. Clearly it was a very new nonprofit, so it was beginning stages, but so much groundwork was laid, and now in the U.S. we're having a lot of success with sanctioning. So like each state, it becomes like an actual sport for girls. So on top of that, just helping with those initiatives. So right now I am no longer a part of Wrestle Like a Girl, but still very much helping promote and all those good things. So, and then started Lucha Fit to create resources for girls to go on and learn about, my own journey, other national team members, and learn about injuries and technique and, what to pack in your bag and how to prep for competition. There's just like not a whole lot of resources available for girls to even get to know the sport just by typing it into Google. So that was really my intention with Lucha Fit, and there's a lot more that I'd like to do, but after Tokyo.
Bueno, le preguntamos acerca por ejemplo, acerca de, les habíamos mencionado que es miembro, o bueno, ya mencionó que era miembro fundadora de Wrestle Like a Girl, y bueno, ahora ya no lo es, pero en su momento lo que buscaba era percibir dineros para poder promover que las mujeres entraran en el deporte para que pudieran tener implementación. Luego, por su cuenta, lo que hace es lo mismo, promover mujeres a que puedan practicar el deporte, para que conozcan técnica también. Y no solo eso, sino que también les dé el ánimo de buscar en Google qué significa este deporte. Ahora vamos a hablarle acerca de esto, de su promoción, de su legado. So now you're talking about the promotion that you want to spread the word or make more women search on Google. What is wrestling about? And how do you work on this legacy, or how do you promote the world, or to the world, that Katherine Shai is working hard to help women raise awareness, and what is your legacy?
Oh, that's a huge question.
We can make it easier.
I think it's all been baby steps. I started and was working on Lucha Fit while I was pregnant, and did most of the work during that time and when my son was first born. And it's all just little steps. We'll see where it all goes. And mostly I just get really excited about creating things. So as long as I'm doing that, I don't know if I care what it looks like. You know, I don't know if I care that the world knows it, and there's so much content and good things to have within wrestling, and definitely within girls and women's wrestling.
Can you repeat that? Because I think I lost track of one part, because yeah, it was cutting. The connection was jumping.
What did you hear?
You said, well, let me check. You said that it was baby steps, that it doesn't really matter how it looks like, but, and then I lost track of that.
So I was saying, yeah, so it doesn't really matter to me what it looks like, or if the world knows that it's Katherine doing it. You know, for me, I just think there's such good content to be had within wrestling, especially girls and women's wrestling. So as long as I'm creating things for the wrestling world, I think I'll be happy. And whatever that looks like, I mean, I hope it just means a lot more people know wrestling.
And how well has it improved that more women are likely or want to join wrestling, and it's perceived as a sport that women can do, and it's very recognized that women do it, and it's good. It's, yeah, it like brings the heart up, I think. It cheers up. It cheers more
I think
people.
Yeah, I think that girls and women be excited and want to be a part of the sport. They just need the actual opening to do it. I think that sometimes the first thing that stops them is you know, perception, or not, or lack of another female on a team along with them. So you know, once those kind of bridges are actually built, and there's one teammate, there's two teammates, there's 10 teammates, that I think really changes things, because the girls want to be involved, especially on the youth through high school levels. They're just not always given the opportunity. So it's like, as soon as they're giving a spot or opening up a team, like, girls are joining quickly. So that means that the perceptions are just outside perceptions. Like, these girls want to wrestle.
Bueno, nos menciona que las mujeres, que el unirse al deporte de la lucha para las mujeres ha sido más frecuentado últimamente, que incluso ahora ven la lucha, es más común verlo, y este es el trabajo que se ha llegado a hacer. Pues previamente nos habían mencionado que el propósito está en que más personas puedan reconocer qué es la lucha y que puedan saber que existe, y no es solamente pues el trabajo de una persona, sino que es el trabajo en un equipo. Yeah, and this is just wait. What do you think can be done so it can be to raise awareness on women's participation in wrestling? Yeah, from your perspective.
And that's throughout the world, or specific America?
No, I mean, sorry?
So I was saying, did you hear my question?
Okay, I was asking, what actions do you think should be done in order to raise awareness? Okay, we can talk about let's say, yeah, United States. What actions should be done in order to raise awareness on women participation in wrestling.
And you think throughout the whole world, or are you saying like South America?
Yeah, okay, we can compare with South America, but we haven't talked about South America. So yeah, we can make it like through the whole world, or
the whole world. It's a big task.
Well, the big task is tougher. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, let's say USA, in the US, because yeah, that's that's more located. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I mean, I think that any country can kind of use some of the examples of another country that's been really successful. You know, using Canada, for example, they did a great job of just starting. They just opened up whenever there was a boys tournament, they had a girls division. And they did that from the beginning. So they had very few issues with integrating, you know, women into the sport. In the US, we've made it a little more challenging because we've had the girls wrestle with the boys. And, you know, kind of justifying like, well, once you reach this number of girls, then you get your own, you know, championship. So I think things like that make it very difficult. So, you know, it's kind of like every country, you know, as you kind of move throughout the world is, you know, it's really using the women who are already in the sport to be the face and to show up at events and to be involved. And then especially alumni, like women who competed before, no matter how much or how little, have them get involved, coaching, recruiting girls, letting them know. Like you just have to really pull the entire group of women so that there's actually a face to wrestling looks like for the girl, and even for the parents who are unsure of what that means for my child to wrestle. So it really comes full circle to use everybody who's been involved in the sport, especially any woman who's been involved in the sport. You have to just keep building little by little, and there's always, whenever you get to an area, especially in the US, whenever they start working with a state who is interested in adding girls wrestling as a high school sport, there's already people who are taking action and they're excited to get involved. So the more that you reach out, you would be surprised at how many people are trying to build up their own little club or their own program and trying to grow the sport, you know, with a grassroots level. So it's those little steps, and it's getting involved with the people who are already have their boots on the ground, as we like to say.
Pues le preguntamos anteriormente cómo sería o cuáles acciones deberían hacerse para poder visibilizar las mujeres en el campo de la lucha, y pues dice que son pequeños pasos, por ejemplo, trabajar desde la base. Y si uno toma un ejemplo de Canadá trabaja chicas y chicos y trabaja por igual. Entonces también tiene su liga para que enfocada con mujeres, a comparación de Estados Unidos, en la que pues, se enfoca únicamente en la de los chicos. Así que el trabajo debe ser desde la base para poder visibilizar el trabajo de la mujer. And talking about this, how is the family support for women in the US? I mean, in wrestling.
I mean, I would say it varies a lot. You know, you have families who are so supportive and maybe had boys, brothers that wrestled, and so they're supportive of their daughters. And then you have the complete opposite, where they say, I would never let my daughter wrestle. So I don't think that, you know, anything that we're dealing with in the US, you know, or anything that other countries are dealing with besides, you know, more political issues, right? Not letting women wrestle. I would say that in the U.S., we still have a lot of the same issues that I think a lot of other countries deal with in terms of being really rigid about their daughters not wrestling. But, you know, there still is a lot of that go-getter mentality and being open to different things. So we have that on our side, for sure.
Hablamos de que cómo es el apoyo de la familia, y dice que pues hay los dos lados. Está en el que su familia la apoya completamente, que incluso sus hermanitos pueden estar luchando, y también apoyan a su hija para que esté en el deporte. Y también hay el otro lado en el que son muy rígidos y dicen, no, por ningún caso pues dejaría que mi hija participe. Encuentra ella que en los casos pues hay bastante apoyo hacia las chicas. And but has it changed? I mean, through the time, do you see progress and you find that girls are participating in wrestling, and this is promoting? And I've seen, well, Wrestle Like a Girl does that, and also Lucha Fit works for that.
Yeah, so, no, it's really growing fast in the U.S. Yes, and those perceptions are changing. It was very different when I was little, so yeah, no, it's evolving very fast, I think, and you know, with how connected we are throughout the entire world, right? We're seeing so much more, and I would just say in the last 4 years, social media, especially for professional athletes and for female wrestlers, has really evolved, and we've gotten a lot more focus and attention and promotion. I think that has really helped elevate women's wrestling.
Yeah, and well, you mentioned before that it doesn't matter like the big name if Katherine Shai has done this, but and you're more into, we all have done this progress to help women, to encourage them to make progress. But do you think that your name or your voice has helped to other women to take the word and say, yeah, let's work for this, and let's continue working on this? Because yeah, I've seen that someone has reached a high level, and we can all do that.
Yeah, you know, I think it's a combination of me actually wanting to put my voice out there, because there's a lot of very, very high level athletes who have incredible accomplishments, but don't necessarily use their voice in the same way because, you know, whatever, their choice, it's fine, right? So for me, it's important to me to do that and to use my voice and to put myself out there. So I'm 100% willing to put myself out there and to have the conversations. So I think that that's probably the biggest part of this, that I'm game for the conversations, and you know, and I'm continually thinking about these topics and thinking about how we grow the sport, because I know that how much that'll benefit, you know, the girls around me right now who don't have, you know, the ones that are getting opportunities that I'm like, I didn't quite have that. That's really cool. So we're just going to keep evolving. So I think that putting my voice out there has been important for that, and just because I'm willing to do it.
Estamos hablando de que ella previamente nos había mencionado que no le importa tanto el hecho de que utilicen su nombre, digan, Katherine Shai es esto, o ella habla acerca de un trabajo colectivo. Sin embargo, reconoce que su nombre pues ha sido para motivar a otras chicas, pues ha utilizado su voz para poder estar presente y seguir trabajando y mencionar y seguir, digamos que compartiendo, publicando o predicando la palabra de que las mujeres deben, o incluirlas en este proceso del deporte y pues deporte de combate. Okay, I forgot the next question. I'm sorry. Okay. Do you? Okay, I'm going to skip this because I forgot the question. And I would like to know who motivates you, or who's your hero or heroine for to achieve your goals?
So my hero has been coaches and people who've really helped me redefine me. One of those coaches is Seiko Yamamoto, and it's more, it was just more the way that she walks and presents herself, and the way she expresses her passion about wrestling, and the way she taught me how to look at wrestling. Way more than just her accomplishments of multiple time world champion, and she's just kind of an incredible human being, and helped me see the sport in a whole new lens, and especially in a time where I actually, it was a few years after I had lost my dad, and so she really was an important person for me at the time, and it was preparing for 2016. My sister's been a huge inspiration, and kind of, taught me everything I knew at the beginning about wrestling. And so, there's so many wrestlers I admire and watch video on, and all these things. But of course, it always comes down to the personal relationships you have with people. And I would say that those two have been really important to me, because they really helped me form a new version of myself.
Le pregunté acerca de quién ha sido su motivación, o su héroe, su heroína, y nos habla primero de Seiko Yamamoto. Pues es una entrenadora de Japón quien la ha motivado, pues no solamente por su forma de cómo se comunica, sino también de su conocimiento, quien le ha brindado una gran cantidad de conocimiento, y a quien le ha inspirado mucho. Y segundo está su hermana, quien también ha sido una referencia grande para su vida. You talk about difficult moments. Well, we have two last questions. You talk about the difficult moments you have had. How have you faced those moments?
Yeah, one of the more difficult moments was losing my dad, and that was after 2012 Olympic trials. And I definitely had some times where I didn't think that wrestling was the right path for me anymore. And for me, wrestling had always been family. So, there was the side of me that was very hurt and sad. And then there was the side of me that knew that giving up was not the right decision. Usually, unless something is truly making you unhappy, ending something just because it's difficult is usually not the right decision. So I kind of always hold myself up to that standard. Whenever something's actually difficult, I'm like, okay, this is a sign that I have to continue. So I would say those 4 years from 2012 to 2016 were really hard. But it was the opportunity for me to find my wrestling family besides my own biological family. And from there, the growth for me as a person has been really huge. And that wouldn't have happened if I, had decided to be done with wrestling after that moment. So I think that just kind of keeps repeating itself. I think right now is another difficult time and decision that my whole family, like, we had to sit down and make to say, yes, we're going to do another year. Even though it wasn't necessarily what we had anticipated, but have seen like the really, really bright spots during this time. So, and that's once again another moment where it wasn't very difficult to make the decision, because I wasn't making it based on, am I happy or not? That was already established. I am happy doing this, but is this a challenge? So that means, like, it's my job to find the right way to make this work. And I think that actually repeats itself as whatever role you're in, right? Since we've talked about roles a lot, like as a wife and as a mother, coming back to wrestling, something called me back, and I knew that it was my task to figure out a way to make it work. And that's been a really exciting adventure, and a lot of really funny times of having my son at wrestling practices and him crawling away. But I just knew that was what I was supposed to do.
Yeah, and it's a big motivation. I think you have company, and you also have a new challenge, a new goal. And yeah, that's exciting. Yeah. Nos menciona acerca de cuáles han sido sus momentos difíciles y cómo se enfrentó a ellos, y menciona que la pérdida de su padre pues fue un momento realmente difícil, en donde lo puso a pensar si era una buena decisión continuar con la lucha, porque ya no había un momento, pero este es el momento en el que ella pensó si ella lo estaba haciendo por alguien más o lo estaba haciendo por ella misma. Así que era el momento de pensarlo, y lo hizo. Luego un segundo momento, y lo hizo, fue retomó la lucha, pero un poco más tarde, pues porque la verdad él hacía feliz estar en el deporte. Más tarde pues tuvo que tomar una nueva decisión, pero ya fue con toda su familia, en la que no estaba sintiendo que estaba dándolo todo en la lucha, y el apoyo de su familia fue total, y ella siente que estar en la familia, estar en el deporte de la lucha la hace feliz, y ahora pues tiene unos nuevos retos, y también tiene la compañía de su hijo que también la hace feliz, porque ir a las prácticas acompañada de él es un sentimiento que le gusta. That's great. If the support from different parts of your life, and members of your family, that is a real motivation, I think. And that makes the heart warm. And do you have, besides of your son and your family, this big motivation, do you have any song or poem or saying or a movie that motivates you, that inspires you?
I take inspiration from so many different pieces of life. I'm trying to think something specific. The book The Alchemist. So it's
Paulo Coelho.
Yes. Okay, so the hero's journey on that, that shows up in a lot of different themes, like in movies and inspirational, speeches, maybe, those kind of things continue to inspire me. So I take it as it shows up, whether I've read something recently. And so I don't know if I always come back to the same thing over and over. I definitely have certain techniques that I use about grounding myself to my values over, just winning and losing, being afraid of losing, right? So I think those things are really important to have. There isn't necessarily just one thing that inspires me, because it always evolves based on like where I am in my mindset, and I'm like, oh, that really fits with me right now, that really makes a lot of sense. And so I think I continue to seek out people who are, really using their wisdom to better the world. And on a spiritual level, our connection to each other, I think that's always really inspiring to me, because it's so much more beyond just the sport of wrestling. That's our connection.
Bueno, menciona que siempre he encontrado bastantes formas, cosas que le inspiran. Una de ellas ha sido El alquimista de Paulo Coelho, y también lo que la motiva a ella es la interacción con las personas, el mundo en el que siempre se está rodeando. Muchas personas le traen inspiración. That's great, finding this source of inspiration and all the words that you have shared with us tonight. I think we're very excited to hear and to keep working on this, on spreading the word of women, that to encourage more women to not only see wrestling as a sport, but also to practice and bring more women, and to encourage them, and also to encourage them not only to practice the sport, but also to define and not define. I mean, like, yeah, create new ways to do things and to mention things. And yeah, all your words are very, very encouraging and inspiring. And I hope this your voice keeps spreading and impacts more women, not only in the US, but also in Latin America. Yeah, because I hope this conversation, many people from Latin America can see that. Sorry, I can hear. You blocked the microphone. The microphone. Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for what you've been doing, because this is a really big deal, and you're finding a way to connect people that and connect. You've done so much travel around the world, so now this is like you're beginning to find ways to give back and start pulling us all together, like connecting the world all over again. That's really exciting. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you too for your support and being here, sharing your voice. Le agradecemos por estar aquí, por compartir su voz. I'm very thankful for this, and I am really looking forward to seeing you in Tokyo. Espero que ya esté en Tokyo.
Thank you.
And I'll be tuned in to listen for new podcasts of yours, and also to see your projects in the future.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Bueno, muchas gracias. Le agradecemos por todo, por su presencia aquí, que tenga sus proyectos. Gracias a todos por estar presentes esta noche. Habíamos programado una nueva entrevista con Katherine Shai de Estados Unidos. Katherine Shai, thank you very much for being here. I'm very happy, and yeah, it was a nice time. You're always welcome, invited to come here in France whenever you want, with your husband and your kid. Yeah, and thank you very much. Sorry?
We'll be taking you up on that.
Okay, great. Muchas gracias a todos por estar aquí. Esta entrega de Sheroes esta noche con Katherine Shai. Katherine, thank you very much and have a nice night.
Same to you. All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.